Hi, everyone. Welcome to Design Tales, where we break down powerful books in design, society, and tech, all in under 10 minutes. Today, we're diving into a book that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about everything around you. Invisible Women: Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado-Perez. Now, don't let the title scare you off. This book is packed with data, sure, but Criado-Perez makes it digestible and, dare I say, even fun? Well, maybe fun is the wrong word, but it's eye-opening, frustrating, and empowering all at once. And if you're a designer, or even just a curious human, this is absolutely worth a listen. So whether you're working out, washing dishes, or stuck in traffic, buckle up. This book is a real eye-opener. It's like the red pill in The Matrix, but instead of virtual reality, it's about how the world, design, policies, and even your smartphone isn't designed with women in mind. Let's get into it. So, what's this book about? Well, the title says it all. Invisible Women is about how the world we live in is largely designed for men, and how that creates a data bias that impacts women negatively. Criado-Perez explores how women are consistently left out of data, leading to designs, whether it's products, services, or systems, that mostly cater to men. It's all about the gender data gap, where everything from car safety features to public transport schedules to office temperatures has been optimized for the default male. And I'm not even joking, the thermostat issue alone is an example of why we all feel like popsicles in offices. It's packed with research and stories showing how this gender data gap affects women in almost every aspect of life, from public transportation and workspaces to safety and healthcare. Basically, the world was designed by men for men, and we're all living with the consequences. So let's break down some of the main concepts Criado-Perez covers. Starting at number 1 is the gender data gap causing the default male thinking. This is the crux of the book. Criado-Perez reveals that much of the data used in decision-making, from medical research to city planning, is based on male bodies and experiences. Women's data is often incomplete, uncollected, or simply ignored. Think about it. When was the last time you saw something advertised as specifically designed for women's daily routines? Exactly. We're talking from setting the temperature in office buildings, which is usually set for men in suits, or seatbelt designs, voice recognition software, and even smartphones, all built with male users as the default. Criado-Perez calls out how it's so ingrained that people don't even notice it. It's like air, invisible but everywhere. Next, we have the impact on health and safety. One of the most shocking parts of the book is the discussion on healthcare. And this data gap isn't just an inconvenience, it's downright dangerous. Take car crash tests, for example. Standard crash test dummies are modeled on average male bodies, meaning that women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car accident than men. It's wild, right? These little oversights in design can lead to massive inequalities in how products work for men versus women. So, if you ever thought your seatbelt didn't quite fit right, you're not imagining things. Now, let's talk about biases in workplaces and public spaces. This one hits hard, especially for any of you in service design or urban planning. Criado-Perez digs into how workplaces and public spaces aren't really built with women in mind. Ever notice how women tend to have longer bathroom lines? That's because restroom facilities are designed based on the assumption that everyone's restroom habits are the same. Spoiler, they're not. Or how public transport systems tend to favor 9-to-5 commutes, ignoring the complex travel patterns of women who are more likely to run multiple errands in one trip. These small oversights reflect big biases in how services are planned. Then we have the new technology and AI bias. Criado-Perez reveals that AI and machine learning systems are full of bias. Why? Because they're trained on data that disproportionately represents men. Speech recognition software, for example, often struggles with female voices because it's been trained primarily on recordings of men's speech. So, while Siri and Alexa are marketed as female-voiced assistants, they actually understand men better than women. That's a tech twist for you. Next, we have the horrifying medical research gaps. One of the most alarming gaps Criado-Perez exposes is in the medical field. Women's pain is often dismissed, and a lot of medical research is based on male bodies. Women's bodies are still seen as atypical in medical research, leading to misdiagnosis or incorrect treatments. For example, heart disease symptoms in women can be different from men's, but doctors are often trained based on male symptoms. This leads to misdiagnosis and delayed treatments for women, literally putting lives at risk. It's chilling stuff, but also why this book is so important. And finally, we have The Invisible Labor. Criado-Perez also covers how women do the majority of unpaid work, like caregiving and household chores, and how this labor is completely overlooked when it comes to economic data. Imagine trying to calculate the productivity of a nation, but ignoring half the work being done. Sounds crazy, right? But that's what happens when we fail to account for the invisible labor of women. Alright, so what do we learn from Invisible Women? Here are the big takeaways. The first one is that design biases are everywhere. From the way cities are planned to the size of smartphones, products and services are often designed without considering women's needs. Next time you wonder why your phone never fits in your pocket, it's not you, it's bad design. Secondly, data shapes reality. The data we collect or don't collect affects everything: public policies, medical treatments, and even job opportunities. When women's experiences aren't accounted for, the outcomes often favor men. And finally, advocacy matters. Criado-Perez makes it clear it's up to all of us to demand better data collection and to point out the blind spots in design and policy. The more people who speak up about this, the more we can challenge the status quo. Let's talk about what works in this book and what could have been better. First off, the research is solid. Criado-Perez backs up her claims with loads of data, case studies, and interviews. She's not just spouting opinions, she's got the receipts. She does a fantastic job of making data interesting. I mean, it's stats and numbers, but she makes it feel personal and urgent. Plus, the examples she gives are so diverse, from snow clearing schedules in Sweden to voice recognition software. She really shows how universal this issue is. Another great quality is that the writing is also super engaging. You don't need a PhD to understand the points she's making. It's accessible, informative, and full of jaw-dropping moments. Most importantly, it makes you want to do something. It's not just doom and gloom. She highlights steps we can take to close this gap, which gives you a bit of hope. As for weaknesses, well, at times it does get a little overwhelming. There's so much information that you might feel a bit bombarded. But honestly, that's part of the point. Criado-Perez is showing just how deeply embedded this issue is in our world. So, while it's not a light read, it's a necessary one. So now, it's the time for some memorable quotes that really hit home. Coming up first, the world is designed for men. The result of this data gap is that we are systematically ignoring half the population. This one pretty much sums up the entire book. The world was designed with men in mind, and women are left with the consequences. Next, we have invisible women are everywhere. They live in the data gaps, unheard, uncounted. This quote makes you realize just how deep the issue goes. Women's needs and experiences are just erased by bad data collection. And finally, when we exclude half of humanity from the production of knowledge, we lose out on perspective, potential, and solutions. Here, Criado-Perez drives home the point that we're missing out on better solutions simply because we're not considering women's input. So, how does this apply to your work as a designer, especially if you're in UX or service design? Well, it's a massive wake-up call. Whether you're designing products, interfaces, or services, Invisible Women reminds you to ask, who am I leaving out of the equation? Am I designing with a full picture in mind? Or am I relying on outdated data that doesn't reflect the needs of everyone? So how does all this apply to real life? And what we can actually use? Number one is to design with everyone in mind. If you're a designer, engineer, or policymaker, this book should be your wake-up call. Whether you're designing a public park, a car, or an app, always ask, does this work for everyone or just men? Next, we need to advocate for better data collection. We need more inclusive data collection, especially in areas like healthcare, transportation, and workplace policies. If women aren't represented in the data, they'll be left out of the solutions. And finally, we need to call out bias. Sometimes it's as simple as pointing out bias when you see it. Did your office design forget about nursing mothers? Is your gym locker room way smaller than the men's? Speak up. To wrap this up, Invisible Women is a powerful eye-opening book that'll make you question so much of what you thought was just the way things are. It's a book that shows us how the lack of inclusive data isn't just a women's issue, it's a societal issue. Criado-Perez shows us that it's not inevitable that women are left behind. It's just bad design, bad data, and bad assumptions. And the good news? We can change it. So, if you want to start making better, more inclusive designs, I highly recommend checking out this book. Whether you're a designer, developer, or just someone who wants to make the world a little more fair, Invisible Women gives you the tools to recognize and challenge these biases. That's all for today's Design Tales. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you love this breakdown, hit that follow button and check out our YouTube channel for more bite-sized design wisdom. Put in the comments how you liked the book and don't forget to mention which book you want me to talk about in my next video. Until next time, keep questioning, keep designing, and make sure the invisible voices are heard. Catch you next time.